This is CheloniaCast, episode 65. Today we're joined by Jordan Gray. He's the External Relations Manager for the Turtle Survival Alliance. Jordan has an extensive history working with turtles, primarily area of research, education, and conservation. He's been a member of the North American Freshwater Turtle Research Group for over 10 years, where he's done a lot of different projects all around the United States. He's started and continues to work on wood turtle surveys with the Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources and the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute. And he's helped with a number of projects abroad with the Turtle Survival Alliance. So we're really excited to talk to him today. Thanks for joining us, Jordan.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Looking forward to talking turtle, as always.
Awesome. Jason, you want to kick us off?
To kick this off with a question about as old as like podcast time itself, why turtles? How did you get into turtles? And I guess what's the story of turtles and I guess how it brought you from or wherever you got started to where you're at right now.
Yeah, so it's as you guys probably do. It's a question you commonly get asked when you say you work with turtles or you work for turtle conservation. That question is always going to come up, and the answer is pretty simple for me in that I grew up. So during my early adolescence, I lived in West Point, New York, and for anybody who's been to West Point, they'll know that it's just this massive military reservation that has all sorts of woodland and wetland habitats, from uplands to lowlands. And it is a very protected environment because you are on a military reservation. So it really gave me the chance to explore a lot. Now, it's funny because when I look back, I was in the woods all the time. But we're talking about like a 5, 6, 7-year-old just going through the woods almost every day when possible. And, I look at 4, 5, 6, 7-year-olds now, and it's like, wait a minute, that kid's parents just let them just roam through the woods. So that gave me a very immersive experience into the natural world. And my father is a naturalist. He's a career military officer, which is why we were at West Point. But he's a dyed-in-the-wool naturalist. He's a master ornithologist, and it turns out I kind of ended up bringing herptiles to the family. In that, that was just what I became interested in a very early age. And in West Point, you have painted turtles and wood turtles and box turtles and spotted turtles and snapping turtles and musk turtles. And then you have all sorts of great amphibian life as well. So, kind of a youth spent searching for those animals. And then when we moved on, when the military moved my father to the Washington, D.C. area, we once again lived right next to parkland. And so I would spend most of my free time just in the woods and wetlands looking for animals. And turtles always were near and dear to me. What creates a fascination with anything? Why do we love playing soccer? Or why do people love NASCAR? Or why do people, what turns them on to aspiring to be a musician? There's just something that that causes us to gravitate towards that interest. And turtles and tortoises, just there's something about them that caused me to gravitate towards them. And here I am decades later, working towards their survival on Earth, their conservation, their preservation, and just hoping that people the world over find as much joy in turtles and their habitats and all of turtledom as I do.
That's awesome. Something I remember from a lot of the times you've introduced the the annual symposium and such is you say that everyone's got kind of a turtle story, and that is kind of the universal connection with turtles that you don't get with a lot of other animals.
Yep.
You know, there's something about them. They kind of span the gamut of a lot of different personality types, and you know, for the most part, though, kind of docile and interesting. But I guess that's kind of yeah. What is it about turtles that's so appealing to people in general?
What a question. People might find different aspects of a turtle interesting. Um, it's so hard to put a finger on, but I mean, just this animal that is so unlike most on Earth in that they evolved to be basically enclosed inside a shell. They're very personable demeanors. They're the inquisitive look in their eye. And just also, I mean, there's so many different species that come in such an array of phenotypes, various skin colors, shell colors and patterns, that I think there's just something so easy to love about turtles. And people tend to, like you're saying, gravitate towards these animals. You don't find a lot of people that really just dislike turtles. Um, we know that all over the world, turtles are consumed by various peoples, and that doesn't mean that those people don't like turtles. I like cows, I like chickens, I like ducks, I like deer. I love seeing deer grazing in an open meadow in the wild. I still like to eat them, just to be, put it like that. So people can still like turtles, but have a different upbringing around them, and what the purpose of a turtle is in that culture and in that environment in which they were raised.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's sort of there's a lot of things about them that are just generally appealing, and it's a cool animal to study and have an interest in. Something that you mentioned that's kind of interesting to me is your early experiences with box turtles, and there's a lot of thinking about Ken Dodd's book and North American box turtles. It's a pretty widely known thing that there are a lot of accounts of areas that used to be loaded with box turtles and now are a few decades later extirpated in some areas and highly fragmented. And I'm curious because you seem to move around a lot when you were younger and you were in the range of a lot of different box turtles. Have you seen those declines in action, and what's that been like to witness?
So all right, I'm going to bring up something that I was discussing with somebody the other day, because you're a scientist, Michael, so you understand the value of search effort. So when I was a kid, I was out in the woods every day, or almost every day, as much as I could. So yes, I found lots of box turtles. And one could easily say, once you're an adult, well, I don't see that anymore, as much anymore. Well, are you putting in the same amount of search effort as you
Right.
did? So it's hard to really be able to quantify, for many, the box turtles, to just point out one group of turtles that they see as an adult versus what they saw in their youth. Likely there's a very, very different search effort. Now, that's not to say that box turtles aren't declining. We know they're declining. Um, Something interesting so ornate box turtles. I love ornate box turtles. A turtle, for most of the people listening, may know of the Midwestern and Central Plains states, as well as into the desert of Arizona and northern Mexico. But the ornate box turtle, we think of these animals as common. They're regarded as vulnerable by the IUCN Red List. But think about what we are seeing today and what has been documented as far as their populations go. There's not much baseline data, because by the time we really started taking baseline data on these animals, the majority of their habitat was gone. So as far as your tall and short grass prairies go, there's only about 2% of those habitats left in the central United States. Everything else has predominantly been converted to agricultural land, and then also some city centers and suburbia. But one could in a sense, extrapolate that we have lost up to 98% of our ornate box turtle populations through the central United States due to their habitat being converted to agriculture. So even though we think of these animals as common, I mean, the magnitude of loss is exorbitant for a species like that. But so so living in New York, living in Virginia, Texas, South Carolina, Georgia, Ohio, New Jersey, California, Hong Kong, Hawaii. Yeah, so I've lived a number of places, and now a couple of those places there are no box turtles. I can tell you there are no native box turtles in Hawaii or Hong Kong. Well, excuse me, of the genus terrapins. But in Virginia, for instance, I always say like it rained box turtles, because in the DC area, the way that the topography of the land goes is that you basically have the ridge and valley, the Piedmont, and the coastal plain all quickly come together in the DC metro area. And so you have a very diverse array of habitats that are excellent for box turtles. And so box turtles were very, very common in the DC metro area. And in many places, they still are. Now, when I moved down to Savannah, Georgia, when I was 19 turning 20, I found a scarcity of eastern box turtles. And I spent a lot of time out in woodlands. Even to this day, I rarely find eastern box turtles in the lower coastal plain, like in the Savannah, Georgia region. However, in the upper coastal plain of Georgia and into the Piedmont, I find that box turtles become much more common. And in recent years, I'm back to commonly finding box turtles. So, to answer the question, like, I don't have data like Ken Dodd has in a specific area, and again, you have to put in the same amount of search effort continuously to be able to to be able to quantify and qualify any of those population losses, or whether the populations are in equilibrium. Very rarely do you see population increases in this day and age, unless it's a formerly extirpated or close to extirpated area, in which now the populations are rebounding. But even then, those rebounds are likely not to historic levels.
Yeah, right. There's a lot to think about there. I think that the continuous effort question that's really true, especially for box turtles. I'm West Coast born and raised, but recently have relocated to the East and have spent a little more time looking for them. It just seems like you can go out on a given day and find 6 of them in an hour, or you can go out and search for 4 hours and there's nothing there. It's super dependent on conditions that maybe we can't even measure as humans, very specific
Right.
things. And I mean, yeah, if you've got long-term continuous data, you could maybe pick up on trends, but before jumping to some kind of conclusion, it's good to stay a little reserved.
Well, so when they were putting in, I don't know if you know about this project. So when they were putting in a bypass in Maryland, a group of volunteers went out to try to translocate as many box turtles out of the construction area as possible. And it was a large group of volunteers, and they would walk transects through the woods, and they would find 1 to 2 box turtles per hour. As soon as they brought John Rucker in with his dogs, with his spaniels, that went up to 44 box turtles per hour, or like something around there. So
Yeah.
that just goes to show you how inept we are uh, at finding box turtles. And I'm very much of the opinion that unless you're using um, a mammal that has a much better olfactory zone than we do, that you're missing out on a lot of the population. And when we make these assessments and assumptions about box turtles, that because humans are so inept at finding box turtles, and there's so many variables, like you were just saying, that comes into it, and if over that long period of time, again, if you have, whether you have 5 people doing transects and then 10 people and then 25 people and then bringing in dogs and then not having the dogs and then going back to 5 people doing the transects, you have such a difference in search effort and uh, in search efficiency that you can have wildly different um, results in your data.
Right. And so you mentioned that the ornate box turtles, desert box turtles earlier as well. And those are really interesting. And I was just thinking about the fact, because in talking about that, you mentioned the range actually does extend into Mexico. And I mean, I've looked for ornate box turtles in New Mexico and that sort of thing. But I think that, so I try not to do this, but it is kind of a natural thing when you think about the fact that you're restricted to a citizen of the United States. You typically think at that scale, and so I haven't thought a lot about, I know the populations in Mexico, but not beyond that really. When I'm focused on them, it's in the U.S. And so the Turtle Survival Alliance is doing a lot of work, starting to do a lot more work in Mexico, and supporting
Mm-hmm.
projects there. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
a two-pronged question. The first is, are those ornate box turtles? Is that something that you're looking to focus on there? And I guess the second part of that is, you've been involved with some of that work recently in Mexico, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
what are the most exciting aspects of that?
Yeah, so Turtle Survival Alliance is rapidly growing our involvement in Mexico, and that is right now primarily through Taggart Butterfield and Alejandra Monsivais with Students Conserving Nature, and then Eduardo Reyes Grajales, who is currently working on his PhD. So you have some very contrasting areas of Mexico that are being worked in. But again, Mexico is an enormous country. It has the second most turtle diversity in the world as far as species and subspecies are concerned. Only the United States is more turtle rich than Mexico is. And there's just so much we don't know. Turtle research and conservation in Mexico is very new. Um, sure, there have been studies done in past decades, like the word of Vogt et al., but um, this is all very new, and it's going to take quite a while to really get a grasp of turtle populations, threats to those populations, and then being able to build conservation initiatives around it. And so the ornate box turtle does live in northern Mexico in the Chihuahuan Desert, and it is not a species of high conservation priority in Mexico, but it is interesting what you bring up. When people think of ornate box turtles, they primarily think of the United States, but this is also a Mexican species. As far as conservation priorities for the genus in Mexico, uh, the Yucatan box turtle is of higher conservation priority. Mexican box turtle and the spotted or Sierra box turtle are all rank higher in conservation priorities. But you look at the, like, for instance, the spotted box turtle, Terrapins nelsoni. This is a data deficient animal. Taggart and Alejandra and others are doing more population demography work and making population estimates, but there's so much we don't know about that taxa of turtle, and there's still so much more to learn. So to address the second part, so yeah, Turtle Survival Alliance is growing our impact in Mexico, and rightfully so. It's again, it's second most turtle rich country in the world, and there are a lot of turtles that are data deficient, that are endangered, or that are critically endangered in the country, and conservation actions are a priority. So one of the species that is of extremely high conservation priority is the Vallarta mud turtle, Kinosternon ucti. And this is regarded as the smallest freshwater turtle in the world. Let me tell you, this species is so charismatic. I don't care how many you see in photos. When you see them in person, you're just like immediately like drawn to this animal. They're just absolutely gorgeous. They're so different. They're so charismatic. But one of the things behind having this newly described species, this tiny species, it's really cute, it's colorful, is the threat of that species being exploited for the pet trade. Now, they are protected in Mexico. They're protected in Mexico as critically endangered. You cannot collect this animal out of the wild. You cannot sell this animal. You can especially not ship it internationally. They are protected by CITES Appendix 1 as well, as far as international trade goes. But the concern that is more pressing is that there are only 5 known habitats in which this turtle lives in. Its range is extremely small, and of those five habitats, there's constant pressure around them as far as development goes. Puerto Vallarta is a rapidly expanding city. Tourism is its bread and butter, and the areas in which the species live are inside the city proper. You have very valuable land that this turtle lives on, but then you also have roads that go by most of the habitats. So you have road mortality is an issue, potential for collection and trafficking of these animals. But then also there's a lot of just lots of human disturbance, lots of refuse, so garbage that is in these areas. And then also because this turtle lives in ephemeral habitats, it is dry for a good chunk of the year. So they go up into the upland habitats and estivate. And with all of the construction activities and motorized vehicles around, when you have these species that live in these ephemeral habitats and then estivate during the dry season, they're equally at risk from being crushed in one form or the other when they're in their terrestrial state. So yeah, this is a species that a lot of effort is being put into right now because time is of the essence if we want to be able to conserve this species in the wild. And Turtle Survival Alliance and our partners, as well as other organizations, are creating assurance colonies for the species. And that's going to be extremely important to be able to have ex situ work to be compatible with in situ conservation and preservation.
I think what you're saying brings up kind of an interesting question, and just mentioning that Mexico is turtle diversity country, the second highest, and it's a really good thing. I think that there is a need, though, to think on smaller spatial scales. I recently am helping with a project where we're looking at a statewide level in the U.S. how do specific states compare to different countries and turtle hotspots like Alabama, Florida, and compared to these countries, they're ranked 5 or 6 when you look at the global rankings. So they're important. But you also have to think that, okay, that's not really a fair comparison, because in Mexico, it'd be interesting to look at the southern portion of the country, I think, has a higher density of turtles. I could be a little off, but it's like when you think about, okay, you can't prioritize the ornate box turtle work necessarily yet, and you've got these species of higher conservation value. There are also probably more of them in those more southern localities, and so you have to focus more effort there, and that kind of makes a lot of sense. So.
Right. Yeah. The everything. So Mexico bottlenecks, right, as it moves down into Central America, and that's very much how the turtle diversity is too. It's you have just this kind of region of somewhat low turtle diversity, and then it really truncates, and in that truncation you have all of a sudden just this boom of turtle diversity. So like in the state of Chiapas, for instance, right, the southernmost state, I mean, it has a great turtle diversity. And you're also moving from an area of northern Mexico is very arid. And then you move into extreme southeastern Mexico, where you have a land mass that's highly influenced by the Gulf of Mexico, and then also highly influenced by the Pacific Ocean. So it makes for a great diversity of habitats, and then a great diversity of Chelonia assemblage.
Right. And so you recently got to go and help with some work that was going on in Mexico. I'm curious what that was like, what maybe some of the, I mean, there's always an adventure behind that kind of thing. So, I mean, how did that go?
Let me tell you, Michael. So, I had never been to Puerto Vallarta. I had never seen Chinos turnedvochti in the wild. I hadn't seen it in captivity either, except for in photos. And of course, Taggart and Ali, they send me photos and video all the time. But so, I'm really excited to go. Thankfully, Turtle Survival Alliance was sending me to represent the organization for this really spectacular event that Taggart and Ali had set up on the Bay of Banderas there in Puerto Vallarta. And then right before the plane took off, I mean, I just got hit with this wicked sinus infection, and I was sick from before the plane took off until it touched back down in the United States 6 days later. I immediately, when I got back, went to the doctor. But for that whole time in between, like high fevers every day. And then also, for those watching or listening that know Taggart, so this is great. So Taggart books our Airbnb, and we get there, and we're like, Taggart, where's the air conditioning? So he goes and looks around, and then he starts laughing, and he puts his hand over his face. He's like, oh my gosh, I forgot to look if it had air conditioning. So it's already blazing hot. So this is the end of May, and it's blazing hot. Okay, one, there's no air conditioning. So I'm already really sick. Like I said, fevers every single day. And then later on, the fevers would finally break. But, when you have a fever, sure, you also like to, you like to be cool, like drink cold water and stuff like that. Because, your body's just, it's fluctuating. It's going through these extremes. But you also want to sometimes, take a hot shower. And I'm like, Taggart, I turn the faucet and there's no hot water. And so he comes back in and he looks around and he starts actually like tears coming from his eyes, laughing, because there's no water boiler either. And so we go and look at the fine print in the Airbnb, and it says no AC or hot water. And I'm like, Taggart, I'm never letting you book me anything ever again. And he's just like dying laughing while I think, profusely sweating because I have this just incredible fever in this blistering heat. And so I think there was a lot of hours like at the nighttime where I would just sit for like 3 hours, 4 hours at a time and just stare at a blank wall and basically just rocking back and forth because like my head is exploding. I'm going through chills and then heat waves and stuff. And I'm just thinking like, Taggart. It's all relative, right? I mean, I live in the hot, steamy, deep South, so I'm used to heat. But man, when you have fevers, right, it makes it all just a totally different ball game. Uh, I'm just not used to no AC. I live in an air conditioned environment. I work behind a computer every day, so that's what my body's used to. Of course, there's people all over the world who live in extreme heat and get sick and have fevers and stuff. But so I don't want to have too much of a pity party, but just to kind of turn it, that'll always be a memorable experience. That's for sure.
Right.
And Taggart will never hear the end of it.
Yeah, right. You couldn't get when you wanted hot, you got cold. When when you wanted cold, you got hot. It's that's a tough situation. Yeah, I mean, for anyone that travels abroad for the first time or at any point, it's like a rite of passage to get sick. I feel like in Madagascar, I got that card, I guess, and that was another fun kind of abroad thing, and we both got to do that. The reason actually that I got to do that was you, so I'm really thankful for that. And that was an experience. I mean, I'm never going to forget that. The first trip abroad is to the place that was the furthest possible from where I was from.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just an incredible experience. I think honestly, to have that in 8th grade when I did, it even makes it more magical than later on, because there's a lot of things that very naive at that point and constantly learning, but it was a really positive experience all around. And to see kind of how life is lived in other places, you realize how lucky you have it in the United States. But also it's inspiring. I mean, the people in Madagascar, in the situation they're in, keep a really positive mindset, and that was really cool to see. And I think about that all the time. But I mean,
by the way, I was looking for something the other day, and I did once again see our picture with the mud masks on.
Yeah,
Man, what stares we got from the community. For everyone watching, by the way, only women wear these type of these mud masks, and the kids were like, can we please put these masks on you? And so we sure, okay. So they painted up our faces, and Michael and I had nice bright orange faces, and then we went walking back to the little villa where we were staying, and man, just stared. Everybody just stopped what they're doing and stared. Basically, like, look at these two idiots. But yeah, wait. So how old were you then, Michael?
14, I think.
14. Yeah. So yeah, what a great experience. Yeah, that was enjoyable. It was good to have you along on the trip.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really incredible trip, and so that's progressed a lot now. I know that that Brett and Lance have both been down there helping with that kind of thing, and I think when we were there, it was within 3 weeks of when this huge confiscation of 10,800, 11,000 radiated tortoises, that the history of the TSA, and it just kind of shocked the whole community of turtle conservationists and that kind of thing. And so the goal when we were there was a lot of different things, but one of those things is to go inspect Lavavolo Center, the center in the south. I don't think anything was moving at that point, but at this point now it's evolved. All those tortoises are there and getting soft released. But I'm just curious what the latest with that is and how that is going.
Yeah, so everything's really moving along, and like you're pointing out, so the Lavavulu Tortoise Center in the southwest of the country just rose from the desert, as we say, because it was just a very simple facility, like very simple facility, and then all of a sudden, there's the confiscation in April of the just over 10,000 tortoises, and then in October of over 7,000 tortoises. So all of a sudden we have around 17,000 tortoises to now be able to provide care for. And so moving all of those from Tuliar in southwest Madagascar to the Tortoise Conservation Center in south by southeast Madagascar in Siombe was just not possible. Nor do you want to put the tortoises through any more stress and moving that number of tortoises to our Tortoise Conservation Center. So rapidly, this center had to be built, and what an incredible effort it was. As you know, Michael, you had 12 weeks. You had various waves of whether it's skilled carpenters or we'll say masonry experts, veterinarians, husbandry practitioners, zoologic keepers, etc. All these people from different backgrounds came together and built this center. And so now it houses those two large confiscations plus additional confiscations that have happened since then. And think about it, that's 6 years ago. So, right? Or is that, that's 6 years ago.
6 years.
So you've had numerous other much smaller confiscations since then in the Southwest, and those tortoises, many of them have gone on to Lavavulu. And now finally the tortoises are starting to go back out into the wild. So the first release in our confiscation to reintroduction strategy occurred in 2021. And those were tortoises that had been confiscated in the decade past that were at the Tortoise Conservation Center. And so those were the first 1,000 released. Now in May, actually on World Turtle Day, May 23rd, you had the first 1,000 from Lavavulu that were released into a soft release pen into natural habitat. And by the way, for anybody listening, there's probably a lot of people in here who keep turtles and tortoises, and you think about the outdoor enclosures you might have for them. These soft release pens can be up to 15 hectares. These are absolutely massive. That's like 27 acres. So these are just absolutely massive pens that are built into the forest so that these tortoises can acclimate to their new environment before being what's called hard released. And now the hard release it's very anticlimactic. So you already have these tortoises that have now kind of dispersed into the soft release pen. They have, in most instances, gained site fidelity to that area or adopted that new area as their home range. So yeah, now we have a 5-year plan to move 20,000 tortoises back out into the wild into these protected forests, whether they're community protected forests or they are actually designated forests like the Barenti, which is a big lemur reserve. It's quite an operation not only care for these animals, but now to move these many tortoises back out into the wild. And it's again, it's just super inspiring to see all the work that is done to make that possible. And we're at a point now where these animals are ready, and we are ready, and our partners are ready to move these animals back into the wild, onto the natural landscape, again in protected forests.
Right. It's the ultimate goal, right, is it's really cool to see that the Turtle Survive Alliance is, executed on a plan to go from these tortoises being in a really bad situation to back to where they're supposed to be and where they were taken from. I mean, that's the ultimate goal of this work. And I think sometimes, okay, you get a confiscation of something and then it stays in captivity. It could produce more offspring, but that may not make it back to the point where it should be, which is in the wild. So, and that's not to say, obviously, if you're breeding turtles in captivity, don't release them. But these are highly structured, and this program. I mean, you kind of know where these tortoises are coming from and where they need to go. So that's kind of an appropriate situation. But yeah, just the execution and the time that it's taken, the short amount of time, is really cool to see. And then with the people aspect too, like you've mentioned it, I mean, that was cool to see on the ground, how many different people were motivated to help with that, and how many different institutions, and just a testament to how fast the Turtle Survival Alliance can act, and how many people have the motivation to help turtles. That was a cool thing. So another project that's something that's cool, that recently has gotten a lot of attention. I think that it's a good thing, is the Batagur, the river terrapins, and that's another huge collaboration. And just kind of curious what the state of that is, because these are really fascinating turtles in many different countries, and all of them kind of in kind of bad situations. So how is that work going, and where's the future for that?
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't have much of a focus on Batagur until I began with Turtle Survival Alliance in 2017. But ever since joining the alliance, they quickly became a favorite genus of mine. But more so than that, being able to work with the people dedicated towards their conservation and preservation. Notice, I keep saying conservation and preservation when I talk about things, not just putting it all under conservation, or just all under preservation. But you have this genus of turtle they're big, they're beautiful, they're charismatic. Once upon a time, these turtles were so populous in the habitats in which they reside, or once resided in. You have anecdotal accounts that would refer to the basking, the basking of Batagur, like as herds, where like at the the mouth of the rivers in Myanmar or Cambodia or Malaysia or Thailand, where it's just incredible amounts of Batagur's basking. And now, I mean, that's just a thing of the past. It's really sad to say. And with this genus, every single member is critically endangered. There's six member species. Every single one is critically endangered, some more so than others. But if you look at Batagur basca, the northern river terrapin, this is hands down one of the most endangered turtles in the world. There are maybe a handful or two still remaining in the wild. They've undergone incredible range retraction, and so that now any that are still out there are in the Sundarbans, whether it's Sundarbans National Park or the Sundarbans Tiger Reserve. and some of the other adjacent areas. But the Sundarbans, for instance, is, I mean, fishing and timber are the industries in the Sundarbans of India. By the way, so for anybody listening who doesn't know where the Sundarbans is, this is it's the world's largest mangrove forest that is on the border of India and Bangladesh. And the fishing is so intense there that it is a gauntlet to make it through the nets and the long lines and other type of fishing apparatus. And so that's one of the things about their restoring their populations is it's going to be very difficult. It already is difficult. It's going to be very difficult to see populations as they once were again, because the threats are still so pervasive in the Sundarbans. And but the thing is with the genus is that some of these taxa, Batagur basca, Batagur trivittata, the Burmese roof turtle, and Batagur affinis, the southern river terrapin, the ex situ incubation and head start and breeding facilities in their range country states have saved these species from extinction. There's a very slim chance that these species will now become biologically extinct anytime in the near future. The focus is now, because these assurance colonies are basically bursting at the seams, because not only has the nest protection and translocation programs for eggs been so successful over these last couple decades, and then those animals grow in these assurance and breeding colonies. But now you're having significant reproduction of those head started animals now breeding in the assurance colonies and captive breeding facilities. So you're just seeing this remarkable uptick. And those animals, I mean, we're now at the point, and I say we as the greater we, so whether it's Turtle Survival Alliance or another organization or our collaborators or partners, we as a global turtle community are at the point where we're sending waves of turtles out into the wild. But it's not just as simple as that. For every wave you send out in the wild, you continue to learn, and sometimes that's a hard learning curve, because you might send a cohort out into the wild and all of them get captured by fishermen and all of them consumed after the release. You might have turtles who lose their transmitters and you never, quote unquote, hear from them again. And then you have others who very likely are now starting to contribute to wild populations, whether that be through the insemination of wild females by head-started males, or the first time nesting in the wild of head-started and released animals. So I'm really excited to see where Batagur conservation goes. Will we ever see them at the levels that they were once at? It's highly likely that we will not, because for many of the species, the ranges have been contracted to such a great extent, and then also the threats are still so pervasive. Whether it's sand mining, fisheries, incidental capture for subsistence consumption, or for food or pet markets, things like that. So again, you've met a lot of the people who work with Batagur. I mean, these people, we were talking once again about the United States, and you think about these beaches that Batagur nest on, and you think about like our sea turtle programs or our marine turtle programs in the United States. I mean, we have very posh programs, whether it's people living along the coast, or, renting condos or staying for a weekend and going out and doing these nice beach sea turtle walks, looking for these nesting females. The efforts for Batagur, it's a hard knock life, whether that, being out there, very small team patrolling, many miles of beaches, to, being able to identify just the few nests that are out there, translocating the eggs, guarding the eggs throughout the entire incubation process and then the hatching process and head starting. It's just, these people are on just a divine mission to save these species in the wild and restore populations.
Right. Yeah. I mean, all of the things that like what goes into a program like what you're describing, you've got the in situ component where you're actively kind of on the ground protecting nests, protecting adults, consulting with people catching them and as bycatch, that sort of thing. And then you've got the ex situ components of these programs where you're raising the hatchlings, you're doing the research to figure out what the conditions need to be, and this requires a lot of logistical kind of network and that sort of thing. And I think that I mean, in order to do this kind of thing, in the same way that sort of biodiversity, I think, kind of leads to ecosystem sort of integrity. You get, if you've got sort of a diversity of people, you get sort of a diversity of people leads to a logistic functionality in a certain sense, and you need to have a diverse team to get things done is kind of the bottom line. And so the TSA acts as kind of a facilitator in that way. You're not a central group based out of the U.S. going and doing all this. You've got a lot of personalities behind this. So who are some of the people with respect to the Batagur that lead to this this highly functioning logistic kind of network?
Gosh, I mean, so there are projects and programs for Batagur in Indonesia and in Sumatra, led by Joko Gunturro. You have them in Malaysia. There's multiple different projects there, and the one that we're affiliated with, more so affiliated, I mean, they're a partner, is Pelfnyok Chen in Malaysia, and her husband Dylan. They just work so hard, and then, like, for instance, Cambodia with Batagur affinis, where we partner with the Wildlife Conservation Society. And by the way, so Wildlife Conservation Society has been a long time partner of Turtle Survival Alliance, and it's been a really, I guess, beautiful relationship in that Wildlife Conservation Society, as you probably know, I mean, is such a huge organization, and turtles and tortoises are just a fraction of what they do. So by partnering with them, we're able to help bring a lot more focus to those projects, and supporting logistics to those projects. And I think of, so like Cambodia, for instance, with Batagur affinis, they have been all but wiped out of Cambodia due to the consumption of the adults and eggs. But there was a remnant population in the Sri Ambal River, and the program started about 2 decades ago, a little less than 2 decades ago, to collect. You're going, the different tasks that people have. We'll just say you have these people who go to this. It's just this tiny little sandbar on the Sri Ambal River, and you just wait for females to come up, or go patrol for tracks. But Michael, I think you've probably been out looking for female diamondback terrapins, like nesting. I don't know, unless you have.
Not yet. No.
Oh, okay. So you can go to places where female diamondback terrapins, and I just bring them up because they're a utilization of estuarine habitats, much like many of the Batagur species. And you can go to areas where it's just like the terrapins are like buzzing like flies, just females coming up all over the nest. And that's how it once was for Batagur. But if you're somebody who are looking for a certain species like a Finnis now, is that, I mean, there might be 2 females in a whole season that come up to nest, or there might be just 1 female who comes up to nest, or there could be 0. So then there's the egg protection, whether it's on a spit or translocating the eggs, but typically it's protecting the eggs on the spit. And then moving the hatchlings from there to Koh Kong, Cambodia, for a Wildlife Conservation Society, to head start at the Koh Kong Reptile Conservation Society. And then think about, like, now you're finally seeing those animals breeding in captivity. That is a long time frame. Batagur conservation is the long game, because this animal takes up 15 years to mature, and so you don't reap the product, the rewards, until much further after the initial actions take place, and all the different people along the way, that whether it's somebody working in finance or somebody who has great knowledge or expertise in masonry or hydrologic systems, or whether it's healthcare, veterinary care, well-being, dietitians, everything that goes into that point where just to get the turtle up to breeding age. And then everything that goes into, okay, well, now the turtles are breeding. Okay, well, the first year, for instance, Batagur affinis at the KKRCC, the eggs there was a very low hatch rate. And by low, I mean 1. And that 1 hatchling was named after Steve Platt. So his name's Steve. And it was one hatchling out of like 77 eggs, I think. Or maybe it was 33. No, it's just 33 eggs in that first year, I think. And then so figuring, okay, why are we having thin-shelled eggs? So then, being able to diagnose that, and then being able to adjust the diet, all these things. So what I'm getting to is just going on to what you're saying. There's so many different components that go into these turtle conservation projects. And I only just touched on the surface. What I like to say when I do education and outreach is that there's something for everybody in conservation. So whether that's somebody looking, for actual employment or just to volunteer their services, because as like from Madagascar, there's so many people who are not professional conservationists there, or professional husbandry practitioners, but there's people who volunteer to bring what they have to the table. And there's so many different aspects of conservation in which there are so many skill sets needed to fulfill excuse me, I just lost my train of thought there. To fulfill those actions, that it really creates for great synergies across different types of trades, and it really is all about a community coming together to save these animals.
Right. I'm glad we're talking about all this. I'm headed to Belize tomorrow for some of the work with the North American Freshwater Turtle Research Group, and all the stuff you're saying. I mean, you bring a team together, but specifically with turtles, I feel like the energy is pretty good. I've helped with snake, lizard projects in the past, and those groups are great too, and there's a lot of good work going on. But the turtle groups always have kind of a high energy, and it's kind of a fun environment, and it's just it's exciting to talk about all the work that's going on, and like at any time of the day from here in the U.S. that perspective, there's someone out there doing conservation work for turtles. That's a cool thing to think about, that kind of perspective.
Yeah, I mean, so I think about that all the time. Well, I not only think about it, it's part of my job. So,
Yeah, right.
What is really cool is that because Turtle Survival Alliance and our partners work across so many time zones, uh, name all these countries. There's so many different countries, right? And there's people that are out there in the field, or they're behind the computer, or they're in a classroom, or they're at a government official's office that is doing the hard work, putting in the hard labor to save these animals. So if it's midnight my time, in Cambodia, it's noon and somebody's out, taking care of the animals at a facility, or if it is if it's 7 a.m. my time, Joko Guntoro and his crew there might be doing nest patrols for Batagur borneoensis in Sumatra, or there's always something going on, and that's what's also great about turtles, is that turtles live across the world. There's not a lot of countries that turtles don't live in. And it might just be a single species, or like the United States, you could have 88 terminal taxa representatives, but it's so neat to be able to have this group of animals that's not only charismatic, that's beloved by people all over, but that just has this diversity across continents and across ecoregions and across time zones, that you can be rest assured that there's always somebody working to preserve these animals.
Right. It's an inspiring thing, and pushes individuals to work hard too when you've got a network. I want to get into some of your experiences, adventures, and some of the stuff that you've started up. You've worked on a project with Glyptomes, the wood turtles, in Virginia for a while, and just curious kind of how that started, and then maybe we could talk a little about some of your diamondback terrapin work. But I guess we just start off with the wood turtles, and from when you started that project, what have you learned now?
Yeah, so man, that project really has its roots back to my early childhood. So that project's in the Mid-Atlantic, and my grandparents built a house in the 70s as a vacation house, fairly near, just a couple hundred meters, a wood turtle stream. Now, they didn't know it was a wood turtle stream. It wasn't until, I think it was the age of 9, found my first wood turtle in the area, that then it was known to my grandparents and the rest of the family. Okay, we got this really neat species of turtle there. So I, quote unquote, followed the population ever since I was a kid.
Awesome.
And yeah, and so in 2011, or 2012, some of the graduate students at George Mason University and the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute were ramping up wood turtle surveys outside of the long-term mark recapture study population in George Washington National Forest, which is pretty large expanse, and they're ramping up their efforts, looking at doing rapid assessment surveys in numerous watersheds, and so I I suggested, well, why don't we, would you all be interested in adding the creek, which I won't name, to your analysis, and so they did, and I joined them out there, and then almost a decade went by, and in 2020, Virginia DWR and SCBI and I got together and had some talks, and started surveys there once again to do these rapid assessment surveys. And what's great, and this guy's kind of goes into like, man, you've got to be gung ho for turtles, is that I live 600 miles from the research site. And to do rapid assessment surveys, you need to survey about every 2 weeks. But just like, Michael, you've worked with alligator snapping turtles, just like alligator snapping turtles, your research is completely dependent on the hydrology and, and climatic conditions. So during survey season of fall, early winter, and spring, like I'm watching the weather just constantly, but we know like weather's weather. It changes all the time. So I'll look at weekends to try to plan, but it's so hard to plan. And then also for my team of surveyors to be able to plan, because you really need optimal conditions for surveying for wood turtles, because you're surveying for them when they're in their aquatic state. And so that water, I mean, it needs to be clear. It needs to be at, I mean, you can do the surveys at slightly elevated conditions, but it's your returns are likely going to be quite a bit lower. You preferably want water levels at either average or even low, so that you're having low flow and higher visibility. Your returns really drop off if the water is turbid at all. So you're watching the weather, you're checking rain gauges, all this sort of stuff, and you can make all the plans you want. And even the day before, you can be like, oh, the weather's going to be great. Get up there, and then the weather just turns on its head. But, just to give you an idea, so I'm doing all that. I'm coordinating with my team and, making the hotel reservations, all that kind of stuff, letting work know that, hey, the weather's looking good this weekend. So at the drop of a hat, I might say I need to go. And then basically the weather's looking good. All right, pack up everything in the car, drive 600 miles, pray that the weather's still going to be good for the next couple of days, because we survey numerous segments, and then end the surveys, go to sleep, wake up the next morning and drive home, and then do it. Try, and I do just try to do it all over again, the weekend after. So yeah, it's been a challenge, but being in the habitat of the wood turtle is just so fantastic. And for me, who lives in the deep South, being able to just enjoy like cold autumn or winter or early spring air, and then like the crispness of that, and these just gorgeous, cool, clear streams, just cobble bottoms or just I'm trying to, just gravel, sand, just rock base habitats is fantastic.
Yeah, it is. I mean, a lot of the appeal with turtles too is the habitat. Like going to Belize and seeing the jungle there, and just getting to walk through it. It's like the turtle's the primary objective, but there's so many things that are worthwhile distractions, I guess you could say. And yeah, it's really cool work. And so you started the TERPS program, and I'm curious about that. and that's kind of a Georgia native thing. And
Mm-hmm.
as you mentioned, the Diamondback terrapins, it's a real issue across their range with road mortality and that sort of thing. And maybe you could speak to that. What prompted you to start that program in the South?
Yeah. So in 2022, I moved to Savannah. And of course, I was already a big turtle nerd by then, well by then. And so we'd go out to Tybee Island, and I would, during the summer months, that my first year there, notice that there was terrapin carcasses on the road. So the year after, I now switched universities and was at the Armstrong Atlantic State University. And it's now Georgia Southern University Armstrong campus. But so back then it was AASU, and I just walked into the dean's office and said, "Hey, I'm interested in starting a turtle project. Who do I talk to?" And so they pointed me to Dr. Catherine Craven in the biology department, and I just walked into her office and said, "Hey, I'm interested in starting a dimeback terrapin project. What do you think?" And she goes, "Sounds great." And that's it. And we just started from there. And I was just on a Zoom yesterday with Catherine Craven. We're still like the best of friends. 20 years later, or more than 20 years later. And so this causeway it spans from Wilmington Island, Georgia to Tybee Island, Georgia. The whole causeway goes through Fort Pulaski National Monument. It's 6 miles. And last year, 20 years after starting to document road mortalities, we had 283 mortalities on the causeway last year. And you're not seeing a decline in mortalities. I mean, in some cases like last year, you're actually seeing a spike in mortalities. I mean, you could get into a whole entire podcast just about this. It's fascinating to track this population and to try to surmise what's going on with it. But one of the things to bring up is it is the only diamondback terrapin population that has high mortality of juveniles anywhere in their range. And their range, by the way, I mean, this like 2,000 miles from Corpus Christi, Texas, up to Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And we're not talking about hatchlings. We're not talking about yearlings. You're talking about juveniles. So animals in their 4th year. So 3-year-old, 4-year-old animals that are moving across the causeway. And I think everybody in the Diamondback Terrapin Working Group knows about this causeway now, because it's just fascinating in that you don't see this anywhere else. There are causeways in New Jersey and Virginia and other areas where, you'll see hatchlings that are hit, whether it's in late summer or spring, but not juveniles. And the juveniles, they're making this temporal movement too, just like the females nesting is temporal. So there's still a lot of work to be done. But there's still a high degree of mortality every year. University of Georgia, as you might know, is working with us, the Georgia Southern University Terrapin Educational Research Program of Savannah, Tybee Island Marine Science Center, Oatland Island Wildlife Center, and the Georgia Department of Transportation to try to come up with solutions. Now, this is not like you'd be like, oh, well, don't reinvent the wheel. This has already been done in New Jersey, and there's things that are going on Jekyll, on the Downing Musgrove Causeway on Jekyll. And there's things going on in, other parts of their range. But the thing is that all of those things that were solutions, or at least Band-Aids in other parts of the range, we just can't do on this causeway. It's not like it hasn't been thought of. Like, we had a brainstorming meeting of all the major players last October to try to figure out, all right, like what can we do? Like actually, can we do? Not like, oh well, let's think of looking at all the things that other people have done, because we've done that now for 2 decades. It's about what we can do, because there's so much red tape. There's so many stipulations that have to be met, because it is a federal highway, US Highway 80, going through federal parkland in a state that has the Coastal Marshlands Protection Act, in which you also only have shoulders that are extremely narrow. Still have to allow for the minimum width of shoulders for emergency vehicles to get around. Like that still has to be met. You also, by the way, unlike in New Jersey, for instance, we have huge tidal swings here in Georgia. So our king tides can be as high as 11 feet above the low tide that day. And so that washes over the whole entire road. Well, if you have fencing along there, that's going to wash over the fencing, and you're going to have extreme marsh wrack buildup from the Spartina alterniflora. And then also there's all these things that have to do with visibility. So the barrier itself can't be too tall, so that it reduces any visibility from the serenity of the national parkland, we'll just say. And then also, once you have fences in, you have to maintain the fence. So you have to have enough room for mowers to get by on both sides. Trust me, anybody listening, like, we have thought of every potential solution, and we're working on it. And Kimberly Andrews from Odom School is working with Georgia Department of Transportation to test different solutions to see what will work, and then of those, what can actually be implemented, because that's it. It's the what can actually be implemented that has just now for 2 decades halted any progress. So there's everything in a nutshell, Michael.
Yeah, the bureaucracy behind actually putting stuff into action is challenging. I'm doing that now with some of the pond turtle stuff, that the research I've done in California, kind of a similar situation. The more turtles perishing in areas with more people, that kind of thing. So logically, one put fences in, but it's a lot harder to do that than you'd think. There's a lot of kind of interesting regulations that go into that. So that's a lot of challenging aspects. I still need to get down there and help out with that and contribute to it. It's just the past few years have been so tight. It's just sounds like some really good work. Well, I think, maybe we can sort of switch to some of your general kind of interesting takeaways and maybe funny stories. I'm curious. You do a lot of outreach work, and I'm curious what your most memorable moment from doing that kind of stuff is.
Let me just say, kids say the darndest things. Okay, there's a show called Kids Say the Darndest Things. I love doing outreach events for, like, kindergarten through 3rd grade, so K through 3, because the kids they're so inquisitive, they're unfiltered, and I know because I have kids. They're unfiltered, and the questions are just, they can't be beat. So one of the ones that always it just sticks with me. So I was doing this outreach event at a school in South Carolina, and it was several grades. So it was about 1,000 kids in the auditorium. And I had already done my whole spiel and gone down up and down the rows, letting the kids touch the turtles if they wanted to. And then I got through all these questions. and kids like that age, like they have questions,
Oh yeah.
or they have stories. You know, you ask for a question, be ready to get some awesome stories about this snapping turtle that is in Uncle Jim's backyard or something like that. But so I was like, all right, I have time for one more question. All these kids raise their hand. I'm like, this got to be a great question. Because it's the last one. So this girl front row was just, I mean, her hand was just going, and I was like, all right, this is going to be golden. And so I was like, all right, last question of the day, and she's just like with complete confidence asks, "Do turtles have boogers?" And I was just like, I lit up with joy inside, because what a great question for the last question, because it just ticks so many boxes.
Right.
But you can, so the thing is like you can turn anything into a learning experience, because like for that, like it's a great question. All the, like her teachers were just like, oh my gosh, like last question of the day, and it's, do turtles have boogers? But
Right.
it's great because it leads you to be able to talk about the turtles' respiratory system, and the fact that they do get viruses, viral and bacterial and fungal infections, just like humans do, and be able to talk about symptoms from those and being able to relate it to humans. So, those kind of questions, they're not only funny, but they definitely, you better be ready to think on the spot with questions like that, because but there are so many areas that are relatable between humans and turtles. You can make something work.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I mean it's kids always do kind of bring that out. You've got to be quick on your feet with that kind of thing, and come up
Yeah.
with something good. The one that I'll get a lot is at least in California, not so much anymore. For a lot of that, haven't had time, but it's just is it stress it out, or like that's more actually adults. But yeah, I've tried explaining that question to people, and it's always a dissertation lecture, and
Yeah.
after about 15 seconds they stop listening to you. So but like,
Yeah, you got to give the short answer, the cliff
yeah,
notes.
right. Well, so I mean, something that involves kids to a certain extent sometimes is the NAFTRG surveys, and you've been doing those for a while. I'm curious what your highlights from that project was, and I think that was kind of your first involvement with the TSA, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. So I attended the annual symposium on the conservation biology of tortoises and freshwater turtles in Atlanta in 2007, but only for one day. And then I was not involved with Turtle Survival Alliance up until 2012. I joined Eric Muncher and the crew out at Comal Springs, which you're very familiar with,
Yeah,
for a survey out there. And that was while I was working for the Houston Zoo. And so just immediately got involved. It was great to be able to have something extracurricular from the zoo, to be able to work with, research and conservation initiative. And so that was my real segue into Turtle Survival Alliance. And then, fast forward 5 years, and was lucky enough to be offered a job with the organization. So, but yeah, NAFTRG is, everybody, if you aren't familiar with NAFTRG, what the heck is NAFTRG? But if you are familiar, then NAFTRG's NAFTRG. And we've talked about changing the name for so many
yeah.
years, and we're still talking about changing the name to make it simpler. But it's still NAFTRG for now. But yeah, NAFTRG is just it's a great opportunity for citizens to get involved in turtle research. And as I think you'll attest, I mean, it's a lot of fun. And it's also, I mean, it's, hats off to those who coordinate the sampling events, because it's not easy. Anytime you're coordinating a lot of volunteers, and also dealing with the permits and all that kind of stuff, and the grant writing and logistics. I mean, it's again, hats off to them, like Eric and Tabitha and Wayne, and many others who for many years have taken it upon themselves to do this volunteer work as part of the Turtle Survival Alliance. I want to know, Michael, what's your most memorable experience with NAFDRG?
One of them was you throwing me in the river at Comal. That's one that stands out.
Obviously, I completely forget. So
yeah, no, that was
maybe I've thrown enough people in the water that.
Yeah, perhaps. I don't know. I think my favorite, probably the one that stands out the most, was at Comal, that my first Calidra, finding the first common snapping turtle. That it in the moment, I remember that was just groundbreaking. Seeing this huge 32-pound common snapping turtle coming up to surface next to the elephant ear was really incredible. And now, having seen probably hundreds of them, it's not, that moment was no less incredible, but they are more, it's as exciting in a different way now, but that was something that stands out. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of more.
Have you ever seen any others that had as many leeches as the ones in Comal?
Well, I think we had an unofficial / official record for a number of leeches, 575.
No, where was that?
That was in Comal.
Oh, in Comal, yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't know if you like in any. I was gonna say in any other population that you've seen them in. I mean, has any come close?
No, not at all. I think I don't think I can even. I've seen the leech clumps on some turtles, but like the breeding masses, but I've not seen anything even remotely close to that. Probably nothing over 100, on a common snapping turtle.
Yeah, it's they just, for anybody listening, these common snapping turtles at Comal Springs in New Braunfels, Texas, they just have leech loads that are otherworldly, and so much so that it leaves the turtles with considerable scarring and lesions. Pitting in the dermis, pitting in the shell. Yeah, they're pretty gnarly looking animals. The snapping turtles out of there look like something out of Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. I don't know what the latest is on studying that. Kind of seems like I think COVID sort of messed up a lot of that. But yeah, well, I guess something else that you play a critical role in, and then we can start to kind of wrap up with some major sort of stories, I guess, and is planning the annual symposium of the conservation biology of tortoises and freshwater turtles. And that's, like we were saying before we started, working on this podcast is kind of a networking nightmare, but in pulses, whereas trying to organize a symposium with 300 plus participants, I can't even imagine, and all over the place. I mean, what goes into the organization behind that, and what are some of the challenges, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's an enjoyable experience. This is my second year being a co-chair of the symposium, and it's enjoyable in that you really, I mean, it's great to be able to bring turtle nerds together and be able to share all of this information and be able to offer to the global community such a venue, such an event that they know they can have the chance to come to year after year. But even if you happen to miss it, that there's still going to be one next year, and that's something that's just really an integral part of Turtle Survival Alliance. And of course, the IUCN SSC TFTSG is being able to offer this symposium, because let me tell you right now, we don't make money on this symposium. You hope to come out flush every year.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much that goes into putting on this symposium, and trying our best to be able to provide attendees with a positive and a memorable experience. But when I'm there and I'm, and working it, I'm buzzing around like it looks like a chicken with my head cut off. But I think the simple thing is that I just want people to have a good experience. I just want them to have a good time. I want things to go smoothly. They don't always. But have people there who have come from half a world, people that are students, people that maybe this is their only time in their life they'll be at the symposium. Maybe they've been there 10 times, 20 times even. You just want people to be able to connect, to learn from others, to share their hard work with others, and to have an experience that they want to come back to. I don't know, you are now a regular at the annual symposium. What is your perspective of it? I'm not going to interview you now.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I think that makes a lot of sense too, considering you're planning it. You want to source information, I guess. Yeah, I probably have an interesting perspective just because I think my first one, oh man, I was 13 when I first came. That was 7 years ago. It's kind of, 7 years ago. That's kind of crazy. But yeah, so it's been something I've grown up with almost, which is kind of cool. I think my perspective changed just on the history of it. We recently had Doctors Rodine and Mittermeier on to talk about the history of turtle conservation. It was cool to give them one prompt and have them go 50 minutes with it. And,
Oh yeah.
And somewhere in there, they spoke about how John Baylor sort of started Turtle Survival Alliance, and the Turtle Conservancy grew a little bit later out of that. And there was a push kind of early on to have a meeting. And I think Dr. Rodine kind of helped a lot with planning that. And I think that it is cool to see, because you can't talk about turtles with everyone around you all the time. So it really is something where, again, the energy is a constant thing. That's a kind of a stupid word to use, but it encompasses it. The energy is really high. There's a lot of, everyone knows they can talk about the stuff that they're really interested in for 3 days straight. You don't have to feel guilty about it, or you're not going to turn anyone away. And it's a really positive environment. And it's cool to see the global aspect of it too. Not a lot of people can say that they know people in 30 countries doing work on turtles and tortoises, and learn about their perspectives on life, on conservation, and learn about the animals. But there's a bigger overall connection here that's healthy, I think, in general, and you get that by doing this. So yeah, just a really positive thing, and like a family at this point. So it's just a really great atmosphere, and a really super good thing overall.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, and it's prospecting right now where to have the 2025 symposium. You have different cities that you throw their hat in the ring, and so we'll see. But for this year, back to Tucson, Arizona, and Tucson's awesome. I mean, it's just the desert is hard. Is hard to beat during monsoon season. There's a lot of great places that one could go. And sure, I have lots of places where I would dream of doing the symposium. Now, you have to look at a cost benefit analysis. Doing a huge symposium in Maine in the summertime probably is going to get a bit expensive. So yeah, there's just so everyone out there knows, like there's cost benefit analysis that goes into this, because again, this is not a money making venture. This is this providing a service and trying to keep just trying to stay flush at the end of it all with expenses. And but that aside, I mean, Tucson is just, it's beautiful. Summer rains just are just, provide for a fantastic atmosphere. It brings out the herps, as you know. So Tucson's one of those places where we try not to plan too many activities for attendees, because we know they just want to get out and herp. They just want to go out and look for reptiles and amphibians. Like, you could plan all these activities and everybody will just be like, nope, we're getting in cars and we're going out to Sabino Canyon or Pima Canyon or something like that, and looking for herps that this is the time, monsoon season, that those herps are out and about. So I look forward to being back there. It's only just over 2 weeks. That's crazy, but I do look forward to being back.
Yeah, same here. I'm excited. It is, I think the best way to summarize it is it's always an event that after 3 days you don't want to leave. It feels the flight back is not the best feeling. So that's kind of
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
you've been with hundreds of people who all do the same thing you do, or bring different perspectives. You see people that you only see once a year, maybe once every 5 years. You see people that you communicate with on the other side of the globe only by text or email all year long, and then all of a sudden it's over. And for a lot of people, like they might have like an almost midnight flight, and then like people just disappear, right? So like you didn't even where's whoever, you didn't even get a chance to say goodbye. They woke up at 2 a.m. to go get on a flight. So yeah, I get the feeling. It's like you go from this high to like crashing. Now, hopefully that doesn't go along with the plane crashing, but but yeah, it's a crash afterwards, and you kind of have to take a few days after to mellow out a bit.
Yeah, and you get to see, see the commonalities and how people are doing research and methods and questions that are hot topics, and kind of gauge the field on a yearly basis, which is cool because it's very different year to year. It's a really cool, really fun thing. So I as we kind of wrap things up, I'm curious. You've got a really good storytelling style, and that's always a fun thing. I'm curious what the funniest story you've got from doing turtle work is. What was the most comical event? I've got a lot of them, so I know that you've probably got a ton.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, something that still always sticks in my mind is February of 2016. Or no, February of 2017, because we had just started the alligator snapping turtle work in Buffalo Bayou in Houston. And so we had touched on it earlier in the conversation, is that with alligator snapping turtle work, it is all highly dependent on, well, at least in these bayous that just are the primary water conduit from the surrounding area into Galveston Bay in Houston, for instance. That this work is all dependent on the weather and on the hydrology. And if it rains anywhere in the whole Houston greater metro area, Buffalo Bayou and the other bayous, they're going to feel it really, really quickly.
Oh, it's bad. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that water can raise by 20 feet in just a matter of minutes to hours. And so our protocols, we had to adapt for that environment. So the protocols is, if there is anything over a 20% rain chance, no trapping. You know, that'd be crazy to think of for most other species,
Yeah.
but has to be less than 20% chance. So that being said, Eric and Aaron Tuggle and Stephen Ross and I go out and set traps in February of 2017 in the Buffalo Bayou, which already has a significant CFU volume. So when it rains, it becomes like just a torrid river. We set traps that evening because the rain percent chance was only 5%. You know, it's pretty damn low. And get home, and then like we're all in our different houses, but we start texting each other because we start to hear thunder and we start to hear these little raindrops, and we're like, what? Like, it was only a 5% chance. Like, we thought we're gonna be okay. Okay, we're looking at the radar. Oh, it's not so bad. Like, hopefully this stops. But you just started getting these cells that would almost like just pop out of thin air. And then the cell came and just sat over Houston, and it just started dumping rain. And, you know, as turtle biologists, we're just worried about the turtles. Like, we're worried, not the turtles that are just out there freely living in Buffalo Bayou, because turtles, as you know, that live in riverine environments, like, they know what to do when it floods. Studies, including ours with alligator snapping turtles, have shown that the turtles have very high sight fidelity during major weather events, or if they are displaced, have a very high chance of returning back to their home range. Okay, either way, so we're worried about any turtles that could potentially be caught in the traps, because when we set the traps, you have about the last quarter to the last third of it is raised out of the water to provide breathing room for the turtles. As many know, like, turtles, for the most part, you know, dermatomes aside, can't breathe underwater all too well. And the reason I say that for anybody listening is dermatomes, the Central American river turtle, they're able to draw water into their mouth, which diffuses over pharyngeal papillae, and they're able to bring that dissolved oxygen into their bloodstream before expelling the water through their nose and back in the water. All right. Alligator snapping turtles can't do that. One good thing is that it's February, so the water's cold. So they can stay underwater for a greater amount of time than, let's just say it was like July or August. Significantly longer. Still, they need oxygen. So where we're trapping, unfortunately, is gated. We can't get in there at night.
Oh, shoot.
It's 2:00 in the morning. It's 3:00 in the morning. We're texting each other. Everybody else has to be at work the next morning except for me. I didn't have to be like start my morning early. So I'm like, all right, as soon as it's dawn, I'm going out there, and I'm gonna try to find the traps. Gonna pull them up. You know, let's just pray that we didn't lose any turtles. So yeah, I drive out there in the dark as soon as it's dawn. I'm able, you know, they're able to open up the gates. This bayou is swollen. Like, you cannot tell where the traps had been set. Luckily though, we had it. You know, we had GPS coordinates for where the traps were. But there was no traps in sight. Like, this water was extremely high and swollen. But of course, me being stupid but loving turtles, is it's February, cold, swollen water. I just strip down to my underwear.
Oh, God.
And I just go in. I just go in underwater into cold, zero visibility, just rushing water. Don't tell this to your parents, people. I did tell them later, but you have to, like, for anybody like Michael, you're in college, you got to have like a 5-year rule stuff and then 10-year rule stuff for your parents. turtles. All
There
right?
you go. Yeah, that's good
And
advice.
my parents already know that. They're already like, yeah, like you have a 5-year rule for this stuff, 10-year rule for this stuff. Either way. So yeah, so just went down there, basically just down underwater, feeling around in this bayou that who knows what's down there because it goes through the middle of Houston, and just feeling around with my hands until I felt the mesh of a trap, and then pulling the traps back out of the water. And luckily, no digits were lost to an alligator snapping turtle. So after all that is said and done, get the traps out. There are no turtles harmed in the making of this climactic event. So we did have some in the traps. Other traps were empty, but for the ones that were in the traps, got the traps out in enough time that the turtles were fine. So that's something that always just sticks into my mind of loving turtles and doing stupid things for turtles.
There you go. I had a similar experience. I'm also helping trap for the alligator snappers, and we had a problem with rain where we didn't anticipate it, and we were all texting. It was at night, and I think we ended up getting there at about 9 p.m. And I was the first one there, so I just jumped in. I wasn't in my I kept my clothes on for the most part, but kind of a yeah, it sucked later because I'm washing them now. They dried in the back of my car for a month, and all muddy
That's
and
terrible.
everything. Yeah, but so I know what it's like. We got the traps. No turtles were harmed, but it can be challenging. And Eric got the car stuck in the mud, so that was kind of fun. We had to get him winched out, and that was kind of a whole experience. So always an adventure.
Sounds like a very Eric thing to have happen.
Yeah. Yeah, perhaps. Well, so I think we'll sort of close things out, but I've got a few more just general questions, and I'm curious. I just sourcing the answer to this question from different people is interesting. Why is it that people should care about turtles?
Back to what we already said, everyone has a turtle story. It's yeah. Turtles are, they're not ubiquitous, but they are distributed across our planet, and we live amongst turtles, and turtles live amongst us, and that is reason enough to save them. You could get into all of these turtles are nutrient cyclers, and the biomass of hatchlings provides food and that is all excellent. But turtles are they're a part of humanity. They are culturally significant. They're important for the ecosystem. Heck, they traverse through our yards. We see them on our way walking to school when we're a kid. We take vacations to the beach, and female sea turtles nest, and later on hatchling turtles go back to the water. There's monuments to turtles. There's all sorts of paintings. They're revered in different cultures. They have spiritual significance. I mean, all of that should just be so easy to make somebody want to save a turtle. I mean, again, I love turtles. I always have. But I can't make somebody else love turtles as much as I love turtles. I can try. I can, share my passion and my love with others, and hope that inspires them to love turtles too. But I think it just comes down to a simple thing of everyone has a turtle story. Turtles are a part of humanity. They're charismatic. They are interesting. And just imagine a world without turtles. It's pretty difficult.
Right. I think that's well said. Yeah, it's the moral imperative aspect of it, and there are other forms of life on the planet, and we should do our part to protect them. Well, sort of as the last kind of general question, I'm curious what's what advice would you have for someone that's looking to make turtle work a career?
Yeah, so I mean, just know that there's no one set path. You know, through there are so many paths to be able to follow to work in turtle conservation, and one path is not always as assured as another one is. You know, one could gain a master's, one could gain a PhD, and maybe still not find the right position that they want to make a difference for turtles. Also, another person might, like we were talking about before, have some sort of trade skill or gain some sort of certificate, but they spend their weekends doing assisting with surveys. They spend time doing outreach, all sorts of things. Just basically just the whole thing. It's like Robert Krause's new book, Turtling, Following My Passion. Just follow your passion. Just make doors open just by doing what you love to do. It's like kind of like don't go into acting because you want to be famous. Don't go into singing because you want to be famous, because there's a really, really high chance that you're not going to become famous. Do it because it's what you love to do, and hopefully your hard work will result in it paying off. So, get involved with projects, start projects, share your passion with others, do a community outreach event. Do something like that helps with habitat preservation, habitat restoration, turtle preservation, turtle population restoration. There goes, yeah, Ashley and EG.
That's
EG, by the way, like, she loves turtle. She's obsessed.
awesome.
Yeah, she's only 18 months, going on 19 months, but man, she's obsessed with turtles. Everything when she wakes up. Time she wakes up in the morning is
Awesome.
yeah, so I guess that's what I just have to say is just if you love turtles, just do what you can, and I think the success will find you as long as you are follow that passion, and then also make yourself visible, make yourself known to others that is your passion and that's what you want to do, because trust me, like, people will recognize that passion. Like, I mean, Michael, you and I are sitting here today, like, we all knew you were going to be a major turtle nerd from the time you were a kid, like 13, 14 years old. Here you still are following your passion, but that passion was already evident when you were that age, so it's no surprise that you're still here working for the turtles.
Yeah, I mean, follow your passion, right? It's also, I think, like you said, if you do it for alternative reasons, it's unlikely you're going to be able to work as hard as someone who does it because of the value in the thing itself. The hard work is going to beat the talent necessarily, and that's maybe the top of the rung for the ones that are in it for the wrong reasons. So it's
Right.
like that. The passion kind of motivates the work part of it. I think that gets a lot done. So, well, I mean, I'll take it to heart, and for people listening, it's definitely, I think, good advice. So, well, I think we can sort of wrap things up. We like to end with a round of turtle trivia, or a little turtle trivia. So I'm sure you've got some good stuff, and you can be as obscure as you'd like. I can hit you with a question. You can hit me with a question. We could do a few rounds.
Oh man, no, don't embarrass me.
All right, let's see. Can you?
All right, I got one for you.
Okay.
So, because we were talking about Batagur earlier.
I figured, yeah.
All right, so I'm not. So this is one. Let's see. So there is, unbeknownst to many people, there is another phenotype of Batagur borneoensis that is expressed in a population. Now that's kind of vague in the way I describe it, because there can be numerous phenotypes, but like general phenotype we're talking about. So not like light gray versus darker gray. We're talking about there's a completely different phenotype expressed in this one area than is expressed throughout the range. And I want to see if you can guess, or if you know, what that phenotypic characteristic, I won't say characteristics, I'll say characteristic is, and what country it might be found in.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there's the obvious sexual dimorphism. I mean, you get in the breeding season, the males get real red and streaks on the carapace and that sort of thing, and then the normal kind of grayish overall color. But that's a really good question. This may just be something I don't know. I could take a stab at it though. I figure maybe there's one that's more melanistic, somewhere that's maybe hotter, more near the equator. Sumatra, perhaps, you get a melanistic variety that's got all the same characteristics, just dark.
No, that's an excellent guess, because so in Sumatra you will see varying shades of gray in males, some which are quite, it's this really neat like slate to charcoal colored gray, while other ones are that beautiful like whitish gray. But so this is and there's already, don't worry, there's already conservation projects in the work. Is there's a population on the east coast of Malaysia, on peninsular Malaysia, where kind of like here in the United States are red-bellied woodpecker. They have a red nape to the neck. Like we're used to them just having the red cranial cap, but these ones actually have a red nape of the neck, and it doesn't look like any other borneoensis you'll see. It's really, really neat. So that's population in Malaysia on the South China Sea.
Wow, that's really interesting. I did not. Is that something that's recently described, or has that been known for a while?
It's knowledge of it is pretty recent.
Okay, interesting. Well,
and of course, it's one of those things that for all those who harvested borneoensis forever, oh yeah, sure, the ones with the the rednecks.
Yeah, right. Wow.
There's so much knowledge to gain from those communities that have lived amongst the turtles for so long, and that turtles have been a resource for, and that's borneoensis is no exception.
Yeah, right. The local knowledge and local participation too, right, in conservation programs. I think that's been back to Peter Pritchard. You can't, well, even Archie Carr, I think you can't really do effective conservation with turtles if you don't involve the people that are usually, for reasons that are justifiable in a lot of cases, using them or overusing them. So, and TSA does a lot of great work in that regard, involving local communities and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, as we say, conservation basically starts and stops at the community level. If you don't have community support, if you don't integrate the community into the projects, good luck having that project last. Good luck having the turtle population rebound, just as an example.
Right. Well, I think we can sort of wrap things up. If there's anything you want to end off on or that we didn't touch, feel free. But we can. But otherwise, I mean, I'll open the floor to you.
Oh no, I thought you were gonna quiz me on one. So let's see. Let's have you hit me with something and have me probably get it terribly wrong.
Okay. All right. I'll do it. Let's think about something.
Don't even tell me like what's great is, so my last name being Gray, you know how many species were described by Gray in the 1800s. Don't ask me to list them.
Yeah, no. I wouldn't know the exact number. It's a decent amount.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is all right, this is kind of an obscure one that I've been just kind of popped into my head.
Broccoli.
There is what was that?
Broccoli. That's the answer.
Yeah, right. No, so there was the pond turtle complex. There are two different species. There's the southern Pacific pond turtle and northern Pacific pond turtle. At one point, though, in the middle 19th century, there was a third that was described, and it was. I give you a little hint. It's kind of related to the answer I had to your last question, but what was the name of the third variety that's no longer considered valid, and what was unique about it?
No, I know what you're saying.
At least the one I'm thinking of. There probably actually were others, but there's one that's pretty distinct. It's got a history to it.
Yeah. And this doesn't have to do with Western pond turtles in Vancouver, does it?
With what?
Western pond turtles in British Columbia?
No. This is Southern California. Well,
Okay.
Central-ish California.
Ah!
Man. It's a niche thing.
Yeah, no, I forget because I mean, so the recent work demonstrates that a very low to almost lack of introgression between Marmorata and Pallida, where their ranges converge. So I'm thinking that it has to do with something along those lines. I don't know.
No, so it was Emmys nigra was described by this guy Hallowell in 1854. It was supposedly a melanistic version of of southern Pacific pond turtles, but obviously just kind of a one-off thing, not really based on anything solid like a series.
Okay.
I've got one more.
Now you have melanistic track chemies all throughout the range, so to confuse people.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, that happened a lot during my surveys, and Here, I got one more for you. This is probably I should ask this, but I'll ask it.
Yeah, and then I'll let the dogs out. We'll let this one be the closer.
All right.
This was going to be the finisher because this is going to just probably finish me in my whole career.
This is pretty niche, and there's a little story to it. So, okay. It's a simple question. What is unique about generally there's a 5 different mountain ranges that create kind of a continental divide in Costa Rica. And what's unique about that area with respect to the turtles there?
Wait, what's the question? What is unique?
There's something unique that's happening right now with the turtles in this region of Costa Rica, the Continental Divide. And so what's going on?
I mean, I'm thinking yeah, there's my I'm thinking micro evolution between in the valleys between the ridges, basically emanating from geographic driven founder effect.
I mean, that could be going on. It's a little more simple than that. Honestly.
Just say no. Just say the answer is no, Michael. Just ruin me.
Yeah. So, well, what's happening? It's interesting. I spent some time there in last year, and we found evidence that there's some turtles that seem to be the trachemies around there, and the wood turtles, the Rhinoclemys annulata, are actually passing over the divide. So they weren't the annulata in particular have been recorded on the Caribbean side of the continental divide, but not on the western side, at least in a written report. I found one while I was there on the western side, and I sent that, and they were writing the TFDG account about it. And so that was actually a pretty significant range gap. I didn't think much of it until I sent the picture to Anders, and it turns out that's something that's been observed by a lot of the local people there, is that they're starting to kind of cross over that area for whatever reason, maybe the climate changing, that kind of thing. So there's just kind of a migration of both the turtles on either side of that range.
Yeah, I mean, if you start having just even minor changes in the overall, whether it's temperature, whether it's rainfall patterns, these animals. There's a reason turtles have been on Earth for 200 some million years. I mean, they're able to make changes, and sure, overall it's slow, but we do see a rather rapid adaptation to events and climate being the change being an event.
Right. Well, I think we can sort of close out if you're good. You're getting attacked by the dogs.
Yeah, they want to go out and go hunting for mice. That's what they do in the evenings. So now they're getting really.
All right. Well, if you want to finish off with anything, if not, we can call it.
No, I appreciate it. I'm glad to be on. Always just happy to talk turtles. So
yeah,
I appreciate all you guys are doing to bring the voices of the turtle nerd world out to everyone. So
yeah. Well, thanks, Jordan. Thanks for all the help throughout the years, and look forward to seeing you at the conference.
Yeah, heck yeah. I'll see you in a couple weeks.